Hello everyone, welcome, and it's time for a Red Alert. Welcome back here on this Monday morning. Hope you're doing well, and almost a week after voters headed to the polls, the midterm elections are not over. We have still 4 major outstanding races that are in dispute, 2 in Florida, 1 in Arizona, 1 in Georgia, and some other ones recently happened around the country. Here to talk about them all is someone who's helped us a lot with this election stuff, SK Burns, Chief Elections Analyst and Senior Political Correspondent James Stanley is with us back on Red Alert today after being so good during the midterm coverage. We thought we have him back because the midterms technically, they're still ongoing almost a week after. So, yeah, that is a little annoying, but still, like, you just want to get the votes counted right. It's like vote on the internet. Like, what's the big deal? But I guess it doesn't always work like that. All right. So the first race, what is going on? Kristen Sinema, Martha McSally. We've heard some good news for Sinema. She's up pretty big in the recount. But how's that going for her?
It's going actually rather well for her. In a state like Arizona, where they had the Republican incumbent senator Jeff Flake, she was actually doing rather well. She started before they started counting the absentee ballots and the provisional ballots. Martha McSally actually had a lead of 1.1%. But she has just been continually gaining ground, hence the reason why probably a lot of Republicans are starting to walk away from that race, as a lot of people are actually starting to notice that McSally might not pull off a win like it seemed like she might have in the beginning portion of the election and towards the end. But Sinema has just really pulled off pretty well in this race so far. Looking at what the difference right now between them is, it's literally 1.5% now. Each day it changes. Yesterday, for example, it was 1.3%. They're still counting ballots. Tomorrow they're going to start counting some more ballots unless they're off. They were off today because of Sunday, but they might be off as well tomorrow. But they're still counting some ballots, so the race has not been finalized yet. That race is definitely looking good. And to really give you a perspective of how races in Arizona go, Jeff Flake in 2012 ran for that seat, first term, only term he'll serve there. He won with a margin of 3% over Richard Carmona. Richard Carmona, if no one knows, he is a physician and a nurse and a police officer out in Arizona. He was also the 17th Surgeon General under George Bush. So he's pretty similar to Kristen Sinema. They're both rather moderate. But Jeff Flake pulled over the top in 2012. But this election, it seems like it might go in favor, and most likely probably will go in favor of the Democrat.
Is there any signs of, like, foul play here? Something that's not really playing all that right? Are there any allegations being made by McSally's camp?
Yeah, McSally's camp, they're really just looking at it closely. They're not going out crazy like Rick Scott or Brian Kemp are going out of.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
They're definitely watching it. She is probably more alarmed at the fact of how it's been still going closely more towards the Democrat. Trump, however, did get involved in this race a bit. He tweeted out on November 9th, just out in Arizona, signatures don't match. Electoral corruption. Call for a new election. We must protect our democracy. Pretty funny that he says we must protect our democracy when he was trying to undermine people's votes. Not really in this state, but in the state of Florida, where he was trying to undermine votes by calling it a voter fraud case when it really is not. It's just called votes. And even Jeff Flake, this is what Jeff Flake replied to him, saying there's no evidence of electoral corruption in Arizona, Mr. President. Thousands of dedicated Arizonans work in a nonpartisan fashion every election cycle to ensure that every vote is counted. We appreciate their service. And that is the incumbent senator who even said that, and also getting from the governor. Let's see what his perspective is. He said, we often hear the phrase, every vote matters, and the hashtag AZ Senate race is proof. So let's get this right. All legally cast votes must be counted. Lawful votes in every county in the state must be counted. That is what the incumbent governor, who actually did win his election by a rather large margin, and even Michelle Reagan said, are you wondering why it takes so long to count ballots? Here's the reason why. She has a link here. But, I mean, just a lot of Republicans coming out in support of what's going on. Actually, she's the Arizona Secretary of State. She's saying that it takes a long time to count ballots is because hundreds of thousands of early ballots dropped off at the polls on Election Day, approximately 320,000 statewide this time. The counties are currently working to verify the signatures on each and every one of those every ballots before they can be tabulated. Once the county election officials verify the signature on each of those ballots, which is no small task, they then make sure that a voter didn't cast an early ballot and vote in person at a polling location. All these processes take a little bit of time and is done to ensure that voters can trust the outcome of their elections. So that on hand is already three Republicans coming out and saying that there's no voter fraud at all happening right now. And it's just another example of, Trump is out of line by far.
Yeah, and it just seems like really there is a lot less of a chance of the a Republican winning this. Dave Wasserman called the election. He's a Cook political reporter. Dave Wasserman, he said this has been over for a while, and it certainly looks like it. Now up by 32,000 votes, and should be definitely going to be pretty tough for someone like Sinema to come in and overcome that. Which is it's definitely going to be very tough. But first, there is a lot of problems being raised by just even Democrats that the fact that Sinema is so conservative and just really conservative lately.
Yeah.
Saying she'll vote for who did she say she's going to vote for Speaker of the House? She want to vote for.
Well, in Speaking of the House, she says she would be open to voting
Just voting Republican or
member of Congress voting for John Lewis. No, John Lewis. She voted for John Lewis actually all of her terms, but she says she was open to voting for a Republican.
Wait, so
votes with
she
Trump.
she just voted for John Lewis?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was a Democrat. But she says she was open to voting for a Republican if actually her first term she actually did vote for Republican. I think he was a moderator from California. I think she was voting for I forgot his name. I think he was from California. It wasn't Dan Roquebar who lost his election, but he was a moderator from California. He was a Republican, I remember, but she voted for him her first term in Congress. But to get more perspective of how she is pretty similar to Republican, I mean, she votes for Trump 64% of the time. She's part of the Blue Dog Coalition, which is basically a coalition of Democrats that are really fading away, who are really on the pathway of just bipartisanship. They working across the aisle. The only new member they have so far is Charlie Crist. He was the guy who was from Florida's 13th district, which is mostly Pinellas County on the west coast of Florida, west of Tampa. St. Petersburg is the biggest town there, and so is Clearwater. He is the newest member of the coalition, but really all the other members are just members who have been there for rather a long time. And that they're just fading away. I mean, once Sinema leaves, it's probably just going to be most likely just Lipinski's probably going to be the head guy still, like he's been for a while. But I mean, there's not that many people in that coalition still who are as vocal as Kirsten Sinema, for example, is. But she's definitely better than having McSally win. But she's still going to be a person who I think, in my opinion, could be not a always. On the line vote. What I'm worried about Chuck Schumer thinking is that since she'll be elected, or if she's elected, that she'll be a solid Democrat vote. But that most likely will happen very slimly. All the time, according to her, at least if she follows her campaign promises, which likeliness of that might be very slim. But if she does follow her campaign promise, she probably might still be on the path to vote 60% with Trump, which would mean that key issues could still not get passed. But where she does tilt to the Democrats is on healthcare, infrastructure, and tax reform. Although healthcare, she's not that left. She's a reporter asked her about Medicare for All. She literally like a tornado said no to it. She said so quickly that I'm not for it. It's too left. It's not going to work. Our taxes are going to go up. This is exactly what Arizonans don't need. Now, Arizona's PVI rating, I don't believe is tilt to the Republicans, but I think that it definitely could be definitely is it is actually tilted to the Republicans. It's Republican plus 5 states. So that means for every 100 people that you will see, 5 more of them. So 55 would be Republican, 45 would be Democrat. So I mean, she's more of a person trying to appeal to the Republicans, which I mean, for a state like that, that wouldn't actually be a bad idea. as you could probably get elected.
But like,
Look,
if you want to appeal to Republicans, why not just like run as a Republican
yeah, I
at
know.
this
Yeah, true.
point?
I mean, at that point, yeah, it probably would. I think that she's more of like trying to get power, so I think she's trying to appeal to the Democrats and to the moderate Republicans, possibly, which actually is a large margin of the voters, similar to how Florida, Oregon, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, really those states, they have the majority of their Republican members are moderate. Similar as well in many of those states, Democrats are moderate, probably excluding Oregon, New York. The states that have majority of the Democrats moderate is probably going to be Montana, definitely New Mexico, Nevada. Colorado's been tilting more to the progressive portions of it, but Utah definitely, Louisiana, Florida as well, South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut as well. They have a lot of moderates there. Really, just a lot of states where they really just have a lot of their party members who align more as a moderate than a solid party member.
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely something that's kind of a dynamic that's playing out, but lessening somewhat throughout the country, and that's to me, I think it's kind of a better thing. Although you may not agree, but like, we're now going to move on to one of the a little more of a closer race, and something that has Rick Scott. It's a race between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson for the Senate in Florida. Governor Rick Scott announced that his campaign is going to be filing 3 additional lawsuits against election officials who are currently tabulating the results of the race against Bill Nelson for one of Florida's Senate seats. Earlier this week, Scott sued Broward and Palm Beach counties over issues with ballot counting. So, is any of this valid? Like, does he have any real concerns here that should be addressed? Or are they pretty much just partisan nonsense?
Partisan nonsense, definitely. I was actually watching 2 hours ago. Actually, I saw Rick Scott on Fox News Sunday. Wanted to see what he had to say about this since he won't go on any of the liberal news channels, so I was forced to watch that one. I do not watch Fox usually, but that he was just on there, so I wanted to see what he had to say. This is really what he was mostly saying. He was saying really just accomplishments. Like the guy asked him, Chris Wallace asked him, "Is there? Do you have any proof of voter fraud?" He just brought up the idea, oh, well, when I was governor, I made laws that would try to limit voter fraud. He couldn't even answer the question. And you know what that should tell you? He doesn't have proof of this voter fraud. There's no voter fraud. Now, Broward
No.
County did something incorrect by taking like 3,000 years to announce the votes. But you know what? That's fine. Because honestly, at the end of the day, at least they're getting all the votes in, and at least they're not saying, well, you know what, I'm just going to give up, like how they did in 2000. At least they're not giving up. They're making sure every vote gets counted in. And I'm just tired of watching the people harass Brenda Snipes for the fact that she is counting each and every vote. Now, am I happy she took a while? No. But I'm happy that she's making sure that each and every resident of Broward County who voted in the 2018 midterms in Florida, in their county, has their voice heard and has the opinion of their county known, instead of just giving back and letting go because of how many votes and how far behind they were. They had
Yeah.
machine problems. They had ballot problems. I mean, the ballot was horribly organized in that state. They had the Senate race right under the instructions for the ballot, and under the Senate race were judges. People typically don't vote in the judge races. All the other big races were in the middle. They had the governor race. They had the agricultural commissioner race. They had all the other congressional races. I would have rather had the Senate race instead of having the agricultural commissioner's race in the middle, because many people don't even vote in the agricultural commissioner race. And also, not even to mention, they also had the attorney general race in the middle section as well. That I think should be on the left, actually, because judges and attorney generals, they're both law officials, so they should be in the same row. In my opinion, they should have swapped the attorney general and the Senate race, how they organized it, to make it more organized, and so people actually would have voted more. The attorney general race, I believe, only had like 95% of the people who voted in the Senate race and the other races vote in that race. It's not too low, but I mean, it's not 100% the same as the Senate and the gubernatorial and the Florida agricultural commissioner race.
Yeah.
How many votes they had? Actually, the agricultural race actually had the most votes cast for that race in the big cities this year, because people typically wouldn't vote for them because they would say, well, that's really a farmer who will be voting for that. I don't really know about what these people are doing, but
Yeah.
Nikki Fried actually has pulled over the top with Matt Caldwell in that race, probably because more people in the big cities voted in that part of the ballot this year.
Yeah, she already pretty much declared victory. She's announced her transition team and everything else like that. So yeah, she's moving on, even though it's going to a recount there. But it's definitely going to be very tough because Brenda Snipes is someone who is in